Let's unpack this. Imagine the dream. A perfect vacation home, a place to escape, maybe somewhere sunny or tucked away in the mountains. For a lot of people, that dream feels increasingly out of reach lately.
Yeah, the numbers really paint a clear picture there. If you look at the mortgage data, Redfin analyzed it, U.S. home buyers took out just about 86,600 mortgages for second homes in 2024.
86,000, that sounds low.
It is. It's actually the lowest it's been since 2018.
Wow.
And this isn't just a small dip, that 5% drop year over year in 2024. It came after huge declines already, like 42% down in 2022, then another 40% in 2023.
40%, that's massive.
Huge. And when you look at the whole mortgage market picture, second homes were only, 2.6% of all mortgages last year? That's tiny.
2.6%.
Yeah, the lowest share on record, according to the data we have.
Okay, so the traditional way, just buying a whole second house, it's getting harder, less common, maybe less possible for most people, which raises a big question, doesn't it? If buying the whole thing is sort of off the table for many, is there another way? Does something like fractional ownership, does that offer a real path to that vacation spot? Or, could it be just a different kind of financial headache?
That's exactly the question we're digging into today. We've gathered quite a bit of material for this deep dive. We've got market data showing the struggles in the traditional second home market,
Right.
Industry definitions of what fractional ownership actually is from groups like the National Association of Realtors. We've looked at insights from platforms involved like Go Forth and August.
Okay.
Detailed analysis of the pros and the cons, the risks and rewards, and really importantly, some very honest, real-world stories and warnings people have shared online.
Yeah, those personal experiences can be really telling. So our goal here is to get past the glossy ads and maybe the vague fears. We want to really understand what fractional ownership of U.S. vacation properties actually means.
Right.
Why are people looking at it so closely right now, especially in this tough market? And, does it really deliver on that dream opportunity? Or is it maybe closer to, a potential financial nightmare?
We're definitely going to explore both sides, the things that sound really appealing, but also the significant warnings, the complexities, the potential traps that the material points out.
Because it's clearly not a simple yes or no answer.
Not at all. These sources give us a really complex picture, lots of different angles to consider.
Okay, so let's start with the background first. Why is buying a regular whole vacation home so tough right now? Those numbers are striking, but what's driving that decline?
Well, the Redfin data and also analysis from places like Mortgage Point, they really spell it out. The slowdown we saw in the second home market in 2024, it's tied directly to the broader economy and, what's happening in the housing market overall.
Right, because 2024 was the second least affordable year for buying any home on record?
Exactly. That kind of affordability crunch hits everyone, obviously, but it hits buyers looking for a second home, something that's not essential, particularly hard.
Makes sense.
You've got this persistent problem of high home prices combined with, still pretty high mortgage rates, and second homes, they're just more expensive to begin with.
How much more expensive?
The median value for a second home in 2024 was around $495,000. Compare that to about $385,000 for a primary home. That's a big gap.
Yeah, over $100,000 more.
And on top of that, remember back in 2022, they actually increased specific loan fees just for second homes?
Oh, right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so that added another cost layer to financing one. It just makes the whole proposition more expensive from, every direction.
And then you throw in general inflation, right? Everything
Sure.
Costing more: food, gas, insurance. People naturally start cutting back on the nice-to-haves.
Precisely. And for most people, a second home definitely falls into that non-essential category. It becomes an easier thing to put off or just decide against entirely when budgets get tight.
The sources also mention something about the rental market cooling off.
Yeah, that's another factor. Compared to the boom we saw during the peak pandemic years, things have shifted. Asking rents for long-term places are mostly steady, but short-term rental occupancy, that's cooled down quite a bit from those record highs.
So buying a place hoping Airbnb will cover most of the costs isn't as safe a bet anymore.
Less so, yeah. The material quoted a Redfin agent, Lindsay Garcia, who basically said relying heavily on that Airbnb income now is less realistic. The super high occupancy just isn't there like it was.
And she also mentioned that even the wealthy buyers, the ones paying cash, they're making lower offers now.
Right. They're more likely to lowball or ask for concessions, which suggests the negotiating power has shifted a bit away from sellers, even in that higher-end segment.
There was another point, too, about remote work.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one, the return to office trend.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, if you were fully remote, having a second place somewhere nice where you could live and work for weeks or months, that made a lot of sense. But now, with more people needing to be back in the office, even just a few days a week, the practical use, the amount of time you can actually spend at a vacation home that's far away, it's just decreased for a lot of folks.
So less time to justify the expense and hassle. But this isn't happening evenly everywhere, is it?
Yeah.
The sources mentioned some places got hit much harder.
Definitely not uniform. And Florida is a really prime example of that regional variation.
What happened in Florida?
The data showed some of the biggest year-over-year drops in second home mortgages in major Florida cities in 2024. Miami was down over 32%.
Wow, a third.
Yeah. Orlando down 28%, Fort Lauderdale 28%, West Palm Beach almost 24%, Tampa nearly 21% down.
Those are huge numbers, especially for Florida, which you think of as the second home state.
Yeah.
What's driving those steep drops there?
It's kind of a perfect storm of factors, really. Some are national issues like soaring housing costs, but they might be amplified in Florida. But then you have things that are maybe more intense. They're rapidly rising property insurance costs, especially for waterfront properties, HOA fees going up, property taxes climbing. These ongoing costs are becoming a really heavy burden.
And insurance must be a huge factor with the hurricane risk.
It's a critical issue, and it seems to be growing. The increasing frequency, the intensity of hurricanes, flooding. It's making potential buyers really nervous about the long-term financial risks.
Flooding especially, right?
Yeah. The sources mentioned flooding is the most common and costly disaster. And alarmingly, something like almost 97% of U.S. homes don't even have flood insurance.
That's shocking.
It is. And the average flood damage claim in 2024 was nearly $34,000. In Florida specifically, hurricanes cause massive losses. So you have this mix of very high costs and very high, maybe increasing risk. It just makes the market feel a lot riskier.
It's interesting, though, because despite those huge drops, the sources said West Palm Beach still have the highest share of second home mortgages, like 5.6%.
Yeah, that's a fascinating little paradox, isn't it? It suggests that even though fewer people overall are buying, the core appeal of certain prime locations is still really strong.
So the pie is smaller, but places like West Palm still get a relatively big slice.
Exactly. There's still magnets for the buyers who are still in the market. The sources did mention a few areas where second home mortgages actually increased, like Detroit, San Francisco, San Jose.
Interesting.
But they quickly put that in context. It represents a tiny, tiny fraction of the overall market in those places, less than 1% or maybe 1.7%. So it's not like a broad recovery, just some small, specific pockets.
Okay, so given this whole challenging picture, who is still buying second homes last year, even with fewer numbers?
Well, the Redfin data gives us a profile. It's overwhelmingly high-income earners. Almost 9 out of 10 mortgages went to buyers with a median income around $280,000.
$280,000. Okay, so not your average buyer.
Definitely not. Middle and low-income buyers were a very small sliver.
And generationally?
Gen X had the biggest share, but even they bought fewer year over year. Interestingly, baby boomers were the only generation that actually bought more second homes compared to the year before. Just a slight increase for buyers 65 and older.
Huh. Good race.
About 80% of buyers were white, significantly higher proportion than other groups, all of whom also saw declines in second home buying compared to the previous year.
Okay, so let's sum up the traditional market. It's expensive to buy, expensive to finance because of rates and fees. The rental income potential maybe isn't what it used to be. People have less time to use them because of work changes. And the ongoing costs, especially insurance, are rising, particularly in those popular but risky areas.
That pretty much captures the headwinds, yeah.
It paints a really clear picture of why buying a whole second home just feels impossible or maybe not worth it for a lot of people right now, which naturally leads people to look for alternatives. And that brings us right back to fractional ownership.
Exactly. And the way fractional ownership is often pitched, it sounds incredibly appealing, especially when you stack it up against all those difficulties we just talked about. It suggests a different, maybe easier path.
Okay, let's dive into that pitch then. What exactly is fractional ownership, and why does it sound so good on paper?
Well, basically, fractional ownership is a way for multiple people to own something valuable together. Sources like NAR, Go Forth, August, they describe it as a model where several individuals own a share or a portion of an asset, like a vacation home.
And it's really important to be clear, this isn't the same as a timeshare, right? That seems to be a common confusion.
Critical distinction, and the sources really stress this. With a timeshare, you're usually buying the right to use a property for a set time each year, often in a resort complex. You're buying time, basically, not usually a piece of the actual building.
Right.
With fractional ownership, the key difference is you're buying equity. You get a deeded percentage of the actual tangible property, the house, the condo, whatever it is.
So you own a piece of the real estate, and with that comes, what? Usage rights.
Yes. You get an equity stake, you get usage rights, usually a certain number of days or weeks per year, depending on how big your share is and what the contract says. And you also share proportionally in any income, like if it's rented out. And importantly, you share the expenses too.
Right, the cost.
Precisely. And that structure leads directly to its biggest selling point. Affordability, a lower barrier to enter.
Okay.
This comes up everywhere. TT, NAR, Go Forth, August, I'll mention it. By splitting the cost with other people, could be just one other partner, could be a dozen or more. You can get access to properties or locations you just couldn't afford on your own.
So instead of needing, say, $500,000 or $1 million for that beachfront villa, you could maybe buy a 1/8 share or a 1/10 share for a lot less upfront.
That's the idea. One source, TTB, talking about fractional investments more broadly, even mentioned entry points like £1,000 for some things, though obviously vacation home share is going to be much more. But the principle holds. It breaks down the big cost.
Makes sense.
And Go Forth in August specifically talk about getting access to really high-end luxury properties in prime spots, owning a piece of a villa in the south of France or a chalet in the Alps, places that might normally just be a fantasy.
And the dream sort of continues with the promise that it's hassle-free, maybe even makes you money.
Yeah, that's another huge part of the appeal. These deals almost always come with professional management companies.
Okay, what do?
They handle everything day to day, all the maintenance, repairs, cleaning between stays, the admin work, managing rentals if the owners choose to rent out unused time. The idea, emphasized in the sources, is that this takes all the usual headaches of being a landlord or managing a property from afar off your shoulders.
So you just show up and enjoy it.
That's the pitch. Unlock the door, relax, no worrying about fixing things or finding renters. One source, Vox, even suggested it could be truly passive income if the rental side works out well.
And some companies, like August, offer shares not just in one place, but in a whole collection.
Right, that's another angle. Instead of being tied to one house, your share might give you access and ownership across a portfolio of properties in different cool destinations.
Like diversification for your vacations.
Kind of, yeah. You get variety ski one year, Tuscany the next, maybe the Cotswolds after that, all within your ownership structure without committing to just one spot. August really highlights this collection model.
And again, unlike a timeshare, the idea is you own a real asset, something that could go up in value and you could pass on.
That's definitely part of the narrative. You own a piece of actual real estate. It's tangible. It could potentially appreciate, giving you a return beyond just the use of it. That's a key difference from timeshares.
Okay.
August and Go Forth frame it as an asset, part of a legacy.
Yeah.
And because there's management in place, maybe passing it down wouldn't saddle your heirs with the full burden of managing a whole property themselves.
NAR also mentioned a potential tax benefit, something about a 1031 exchange.
Yeah, they suggested it might work, depending on the legal setup. A 1031 exchange lets you defer taxes when you sell one investment property and buy another similar one. Apparently, fractional ownership could qualify, whereas something like a REIT usually doesn't.
But they added a big consult your tax advisor warning.
Absolutely. Always essential. But the possibility is presented as another potential plus.
Okay, so let's recap the dream pitch. Lower upfront cost gets you into luxury spots. Professional management makes it hassle-free. Maybe you get a collection of places for variety. You own a real asset that could appreciate. And maybe, just maybe, some tax perks.
That's the attractive picture, yes.
It sounds really compelling, especially if you're one of those people priced out of the traditional second home market we were just discussing.
It absolutely sounds like a neat way around those high hurdles and the ongoing burdens of full ownership. It seems to directly address those pain points.
There's always a but, isn't there?
There usually is, and the sources we looked at make it very clear that this appealing picture comes with some pretty significant risks, hidden costs, and downsides you really need to understand. The dream pitch isn't the full story.
Okay, let's flip the coin then. Where does this dream start to look more like a potential nightmare. Those Reddit comments definitely gave a sense of the downsides.
They really did bring some cold reality to it. And the potential problems often start right after you buy in, with the ongoing costs.
Okay, the fees. What kind of fees are we talking about?
Well, these cover everything needed to run and maintain the property, split among the owners. You've got strata fees, which are like HOA fees, regular maintenance, upkeep, property taxes, and of course the fees for the management company itself.
Right.
But the big worry, highlighted really strongly by one Reddit user who seemed to specialize in this, is that these annual fees can skyrocket. And crucially, they warned there's often no limit on increases written into the contract.
No limit, so they could just keep going up indefinitely.
Potentially, yes. And you're stuck paying them whether you actually use your weeks that year or not.
That sounds like a major risk right there.
Yeah.
You're not just buying property, you're signing up for potentially runaway operating costs.
It's a huge commitment. And then on top of the regular fees, there's the issue of special assessments.
Special assessments. What are those?
These are extra, often large charges for major capital projects. Think big repairs, essential upgrades, or maybe scheduled large-scale renovations. The Reddit user looking at Trumblant mentioned an example, an assessment of around $20,000 needed every 10-15 years just for refurbishment because the place got used so heavily.
$20,000 just like that. Ouch.
Yeah, and that same user made a really smart point. You absolutely have to find out the property's refurbishment schedule before you buy. Why is that unit for sale right now? Maybe it's because a big assessment is coming due?
Good point. Sneaky.
That kind of digging is vital to avoid a sudden financial shock. Another area where the dream can fade is that passive income from renting it out.
Right, the rental pool. How does that work or not work?
The sources explain that if owners put their unused time into a rental program, the income usually gets pooled together. But then all the operating costs, management fees, taxes, maintenance get taken out first.
So you only get a share of what's left over.
Exactly. A share of the net, which is often much smaller. And how it's divided isn't always straightforward.
What do you mean? It's not just based on how much your time rented for?
Not necessarily. That's a key detail people miss. The Reddit user who looked into this found the payout formula was often based on things like your share's square footage or just the number of days you put in the pool, not the actual revenue those specific days brought in.
Oh, I see.
So they found that the rental income often barely breaks even with the fees. One person complained they basically got 20% only of the gross rent after all the deductions.
20%. Wow.
And a big point of frustration is if you contribute your really valuable weeks like Christmas or peak summer, the high rent generated, then just gets averaged out and shared with owners who maybe only contribute low season weeks. Your best earning potential gets spread thin.
So that passive income dream might, at best, just offset some of the fees, or maybe just break even. It's probably not going to be a big moneymaker.
Unlikely to provide a significant return on your investment, yeah. Especially when you think about the opportunity cost, what that money could be doing elsewhere.
Like that Reddit user calculated, investing the capital might just pay for renting nice places anyway.
Exactly. That comparison really puts the true financial cost in perspective, and sometimes even smaller fees add up. One user mentioned getting charged a cleaning fee every single time they used their own unit.
Even if no one else had used it.
Apparently so. Little things like that can definitely chip away at the value proposition.
Okay, so that covers the financial risks. What about control? You don't really control the property like you would if you owned it outright.
Right. That's a huge difference. Your direct control is very limited. Big decisions like renovations, furniture changes, major repairs, even rule changes are usually made either by all the owners together, which can be tough.
I can imagine getting everyone to agree.
Or, more often, they're made by the management company. And their decisions might not always be what you personally want. NAR points out that getting consensus among multiple owners is often a challenge. August acknowledges this is a perceived risk, but argues good agreements can manage it. Still, it's a potential friction point.
And even with those collections of properties, you're still stuck within that specific company's offerings. You can't just decide to vacation somewhere totally different on a whim.
Right. You get variety within their system, but not total freedom, like just renting wherever you want. And then there's the basic issue of actually using the place.
Getting the weeks you want.
Exactly. Your ownership gives you a set amount of time, but actually booking the specific weeks you want might be tricky. There's usually a booking system, and you might be competing with other owners for popular times.
Like school holidays.
Perfect example. The Reddit user with kids mentioned this family travel often has to happen during specific school breaks, and those might be the hardest weeks to reserve. You really need to understand how that booking system works, the rules, the real availability, before you commit.
Okay, now let's tackle what sounds like maybe the biggest potential nightmare. Getting out, selling your share.
Yeah, this came up again and again as a major, major risk. Illiquidity, difficulty selling, multiple sources flag this. Fractional shares can apparently be very slow to sell.
How slow?
One user said they'd seen shares sit in the market for several months. There might not be an established, easy-to-use secondary market for them, or if there is one, it might be really weak, with few buyers.
And those Reddit warnings were brutal, like close to impossible to sell and get your money back.
Yeah, and you pay to get in, you pay to get out. Those phrases really capture the potential trap.
If you can't sell it easily.
Then it's not really a liquid asset, is it? You're potentially stuck with those ongoing costs indefinitely until you find a buyer, maybe only by offering a huge discount. And that ties into the concern about limited appreciation. If it's not gaining much value and it's hard to sell, it starts to look less like an investment.
And like any real estate, its value can still go down if the overall market tanks.
Right. Absolutely. Your fractional share is still subject to those broader market forces, just like a whole property.
Okay, what about the legal side and the management itself? More complexity there.
Definitely. These aren't simple ownership structures. They involve specific legal agreements, operating rules, regulations. It can be complex, very different from just buying a house.
Wow.
August and Goforth strongly advise getting clear agreements reviewed by a lawyer who specializes in this stuff.
Which makes sense.
And your whole experience really hinges on how good that management company is. Their reputation, how well they maintain the place, how transparent they are with money, how they handle disputes between owners. All of that is critical.
What if the management's bad or the company goes bust?
That's a huge risk factor. Remember the Reddit user who loved their fractional? They specifically credited a great condo association, which implies great management and cooperative owners. The flip side is, if that's missing, your experience could be awful.
And one source, TAB, mentioned these are often unregulated investments.
Yeah, that's a key disclaimer they included.
What does unregulated mean for a buyer?
It generally means you don't have the same level of consumer protection you might get with regulated financial products. Things like compensation schemes if the company fails, or formal ombudsman services to resolve disputes. Those safety nets often aren't there. Your capital is basically fully at risk with less oversight.
Okay, so let's paint the full picture now. The dream. Lower upfront cost, luxury access, easy management. The potential nightmare. Fees that spiral out of control, surprise mega bills for repairs, rental income that barely covers anything, no real control, frustration getting the weeks you want, and then potentially being totally stuck, unable to sell your share without losing a ton of money. And it all depends on management that might not even be regulated.
That sums up the tension pretty well. It sounds like you need to look way beyond the initial sticker price and the glossy photos.
You absolutely have to, which is why those real-world stories, especially from that Reddit thread, are so valuable. They ground the whole discussion.
They provide that crucial practical perspective.
Let's use those practical insights to build a sort of checklist.
Yeah.
What are the absolute must-ask questions, the essential due diligence someone needs to do? We heard from that person who could afford it, but just didn't want to lose my shirt, right? That fear is real.
It's central. And remember the person who talked to the specialist realtor. That was so revealing.
Yeah, they decided against it because it looked like just a break-even deal at best.
Exactly. The realtor's data suggested the rental income would likely only cover the fees and taxes. And when they did that crucial comparison, the opportunity cost.
Right. What could that money earn elsewhere?
Yeah. They figured investing, say, $300, even at a modest 5% return, would generate $15K a year. That's a solid budget for just renting amazing places each year without any of the ownership headaches or risks.
That's such a powerful way to frame it. It forces you to think about it not just as buying a vacation spot, but as an investment decision. Is this the best use of that capital compared to, say, stocks or just renting?
It shifts it from an emotional purchase to a rational financial calculation. And we also heard from the person who did have a good experience switching from full ownership to fractional.
But their success was tied directly to having a great condo association.
Explicitly, which underscores how vital good management and good co-owner relationships are. It's not a minor detail. It could be the whole ballgame.
And then you have the really blunt warnings. No, don't do it. Bad decision. calling it prepaying $300 worth of holidays with potentially high carrying costs. These are real anxieties.
So putting all this together, from the real experiences and the other sources, what's the essential checklist? Number 1, repeated advice. Talk to independent professionals. Get a lawyer who knows fractional ownership inside out. And talk to a realtor who actually buys and sells these specific types of shares, not just any realtor.
And what should you push them for, especially the realtor?
Hard data. Ask for the history. Past rental pool income statements for that specific property or scheme. Ask how much the annual fees have actually increased year over year for the last 5 or 10 years. Ask about the history of special assessments. When were they? How much were they? And what's scheduled next? You need real numbers, not just rosy projections.
And getting total clarity on all the costs, not just the purchase price.
Absolutely vital. Get the full breakdown of buying costs? Sure. But then dig relentlessly into the ongoing stuff. Strata HOA fees, maintenance, taxes, management fees. How often have they gone up? Are there any caps on increases? And nail down the special assessment situation. Is there a reserve fund? What's the refurbishment schedule? What did past big jobs cost the owners?
Understanding that rental pool math seems critical too.
It is. Get the exact formula for how net income is split. Is it based on your unit's performance or just averaged out? Ask to see actual past statements showing payouts to owners, not just gross figures. And probably best to assume the passive income will be minimal or zero and budget like that's the case.
And knowing when and how you can actually use this place you supposedly own a piece of.
Yes. Understand the usage rules, the booking system completely. How flexible is it really? How much competition is there for holidays? What if you can't get the dates you need? Can you trade weeks? How does that work? Is it realistic for your family schedule?
And checking out the management company seems non-negotiable.
You have to. What's their track record, specifically with fractionals? How long have they managed this place? How do they communicate? How are disputes handled? Dig into their reputation.
And the advice to actually stay there first as a regular guest.
Makes total sense. Experience it yourself, see the condition, interact with the staff, feel the location. This is supposed to be enjoyable, right?
Okay. And finally, the big one, the exit strategy.
Cannot gloss over this. Get a clear, documented understanding of how you sell. Is there a resale program run by the company? Is there a real functioning secondary market? What are the selling costs, commissions, fees? How long does it typically take to sell a share in this specific property or program? Ask for examples of past sales, successful or not, and basically assume selling will be hard, slow, and maybe expensive. Plan for that possibility.
And always do that comparison. Total cost of fractional versus just renting a similar place for the weeks you'd use it, or investing the money elsewhere and using the returns for travel.
That comparison helps you cut through the marketing and see if the supposed affordability and ownership benefits actually hold up financially against simpler alternatives.
Okay, so let's try to pull this all together.
All right.
We look at the tough market for whole second homes, the very attractive pitch for fractional ownership as a workaround, but then dug into all these potential risks and warnings from real life. Based on everything we've covered from these sources, is fractional ownership of a U.S. vacation property a dream? Or does it really risk becoming a financial nightmare?
Well, based on this material, it's definitely not a simple yes or no. It really does have elements of that dream, especially up front. It undeniably lowers that initial cost barrier to getting into high-value properties, desirable locations. And that idea of professional passive management, that's a huge draw, taking away the usual landlord stress. It can genuinely give you access to vacation lifestyles you might never afford otherwise. But the potential to become a financial nightmare is very real, especially if you go in without doing exhaustive homework. Those escalating, maybe uncapped ongoing fees, the threat of huge, unexpected special assessments, the strong possibility that rental income won't cover much, the lack of control, the booking frustrations, and maybe most importantly, that massive risk of being unable to sell your share easily or without taking a big loss. Any one of those or a combination could absolutely turn the dream sour.
Those real-world stories, especially from Reddit, they really hammer home that potential gap between the sales pitch and the long-term financial reality, don't they? Especially on costs and the difficulty of getting out.
They're powerful warnings. And thinking back to the overall slowdown in the traditional second home market we started with, that current environment with fewer buyers overall could make the inherent difficulty of selling a fractional share even worse.
Right. If the whole market is sluggish, finding a buyer for a niche, complex product like a fractional share could be tougher than ever.
Exactly, which is why it's so important for you, the listener, to understand all this. Fractional ownership isn't just like buying a smaller house. It's a totally different kind of ownership. It has its own unique legal setup, its own financial model, its own practical challenges. You have to understand the specific animal to avoid the traps.
This has been quite a deep dive. Let's try to boil down the absolute key takeaways, the main lessons from these sources for anyone even thinking about this.
Okay. First, remember the fundamental definition. Fractional ownership is about owning actual equity in the property, not just buying usage time like a timeshare. That's key.
Second, its main appeal is real. Lower initial cost for high-value properties, plus that passive professional management.
Third, and this is huge, do rigorous due diligence on all the costs. Look way past the purchase price. Understand the ongoing fees, how much they've increased historically, and the real potential for big special assessments down the line. Assume costs will likely rise.
Fourth, get total clarity on the practical side. How does the booking system really work? How likely are you to get the weeks you want? Understand the management structure and how disagreements are handled.
Fifth, and maybe the most critical warning, recognize the exit strategy is a major challenge and potential cost center. Selling a fractional share can be very difficult, very slow, and you might have to take a significant loss. It's likely an illiquid asset.
And finally, summarizing all the advice, do your homework exhaustively. Talk to specialized lawyers and realtors. Demand historical data on costs and rentals. Stay there yourself. And honestly compare the total value proposition against just renting or investing your capital elsewhere.
Those are definitely the crucial guardrails that emerge from the sources we looked at.
Okay, so given everything we've discussed, the affordability crisis hitting traditional second homes, the allure, but also the serious complexities of fractional ownership, the significant financial risks around ongoing costs, and especially the difficulty of selling. Here's a final thought to leave you with. When people consider buying a piece of a vacation property like this, is the motivation truly about making a sound financial investment that's likely to appreciate? Or is it, perhaps more fundamentally, about buying access to a certain lifestyle, a certain kind of experience, at a price point that just feels more achievable right now? And if it's primarily about buying that access, the question becomes, are you genuinely prepared for the potential reality that the ongoing costs of maintaining that access could climb significantly, perhaps indefinitely? And are you prepared for the possibility that you might be locked into paying those costs for much, much longer than you ever planned, simply because getting out, selling that piece, could prove incredibly difficult or financially painful?
That really forces you to confront the potential long-term financial commitment head-on, doesn't it? Beyond just the initial appeal of the lifestyle access.